Hello and welcome back to Inside Network Marketing. I'm Len Clements, and this is part two of a four-part series that I'm doing describing the differences between pyramid and Ponzi schemes and illegal securities or investments, and what defines those three things, and what differentiates them from legal network marketing companies. And then the first part we've already done, which was pyramid schemes, what defines a pyramid scheme and distinguishes it from legitimate MLM companies. This one will be on Ponzi schemes, which actually is different than pyramid schemes. The next one will be the securities issue. And then finally, we're going to wrap this up by using Zeek Rewards as a case study because they got accused of being all three. So I thought that would be a good one to use in this particular situation. Now, Ponzi schemes. Ponzi schemes are often, that term is used interchangeably with pyramid schemes a lot. A lot of people think they're synonymous. In fact, I've seen a lot of news reports in very high-profile publications where they've referred to pyramid schemes as Ponzi schemes, or even as both of them interchangeably throughout the article. And that's not the case. You're either a Ponzi or a pyramid, and I'll give you the distinction here. But one of the distinctions that you'll hear a lot is that a Ponzi scheme is usually controlled by one person. There's a particular schemer who's like the hub of the whole thing, and all of the victims of it, participants interact with that one person, kind of like Bernie Madoff, for example. Whereas in a pyramid scheme, you'll see several people, or many millions of people, depending on how big it gets, all promoting the scheme individually. Kind of geometrically progressing out. So there's not just one person controlling all of the payouts and everything. But I've seen exceptions to that. That's usually the case. That is true. But I've seen examples where companies disguised as MLM companies have had multiple payouts, multiple levels of payouts that paid out more than 100%, thus making them a Ponzi. But I'll get to the details of that in a minute. Just for right now, just know there is usually one individual hub, one person who controls everything in a Ponzi. It's a lot of people promoting the scheme in a pyramid, but there are exceptions to that. A lot of times you'll hear that a Ponzi scheme, it usually relies on some kind of obscure or esoteric sort of investment strategy. Like Alan Stanford, for example, which created one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history. He claimed that he was making all of his great returns on some kind of unique way of manipulating certificates of deposit, CDs. Bernie Madoff just claimed he was just exceptionally great at investing. He just knew the right companies to invest in and when to pull his money out and so forth. Carlo Ponzi, which the scheme is named after, a guy by the name of Carlo or Charles Ponzi, back in the 1920s, ran a scheme that was finally called a Ponzi scheme. He claimed that his great return on investment that he was getting for everyone who would invest in his scheme was coming from it was called International Postal Reply Coupons, I believe it was. He had some way of manipulating that to create this great return. Whereas, of course, in a pyramid scheme, they're very explicit about the fact that the payout's coming from the money from new investors. They're very clear about it, like the airplane game, which is one of the most popular and well-known pyramid schemes, classic pyramid schemes, no product or anything. Back in the 1980s, you invested $1,500. And if you got enough other people to also participate with this $1,500, you cashed out for $10,000. And they were very clear. You just got to get more people to pay the $1,500. So they're very open about the fact that we need more money coming in to pay these things out. So that's another distinction between the two. Now, take Carlo Ponzi, for example. He promised that, I've only been doing this for 22 years. You think I would learn by now to take a swig of a carbonated beverage right before I start speaking. Ponzi offered 50% return on an investment within 45 days. You pay me $1,000 and give me 45 days, I'll pay you $1,500 back. So that'd be kind of like an MLM company that said, we're going to pay 50% down 3 levels. Okay, so that's 150% payout. $100 order comes in, we're going to pay out $150. How do you pay out $150 on $100 coming in? Well, Ponzi had to figure out how to do that too. Well, how do you do it? Simple. He gets somebody, investor number one, here's my $1,000. Well, to pay him $1,500, I've got to find another $1,000 investor. So investor number two comes in. Ponzi takes $500 from his investment, applies it to investor number one's investment, pays him back his $1,500. But now he's got $500 left, and he owes investor number two $1,500. Where does he get the other $1,000? From investor number three. Investor number three comes in, here's my $1,000. He takes that $1,000, applies it to the $500 he had left from investor number two, pays investor number two his $1,500. But now he's got investor number three expecting a $1,500 return, and Ponzi has no money left. So he needs two investors. Two more investors to give him $1,000, of which he'll take $500 from one and $1,000 from the other, pay it to investor number three. He's got his $1,500. Now he's got $500 left and two more investors expecting a $1,500 return, which he has to now get three more investors to cover. But at this point, it's no problem, because Ponzi has three people that are acting as pretty good wingmen at this point. They're all out there going, he did it. I gave him $1,000. It didn't take 45 days. Only took him a week. I got my $1,500 back. So yeah, so people that were a little skeptical, thought it was too good to be true, they got, well, it worked for these three guys, so we'll try it too. So as the geometric progression occurred as far as the required number of investors to keep the scheme going, as that expanded, so did the number of people that were willing to invest. As more and more people actually got the return that was promised, the barriers would go down, the trust level would go up, and the next thing you know, he had literally hundreds of thousands of people investing with him. But of course, like a pyramid scheme, inevitably it has to geometrically progress only so far before you saturate and the scheme has to fall apart, which usually occurs in a matter of a few months or maybe a couple of years at the most, which you would think would be a pretty good indicator for a lot of anti-MLM skeptics out there that doesn't apply to network marketing companies, considering we've got 9 that I can count that are over 40 years old. One of which, called Amway, just had a record quarter. Okay, they're still going up. So, yeah, it doesn't apply to network marketing companies. You think that would be obvious on its face, but yet we still get accused of inevitable market saturation. So again, here's the distinction. In a pyramid scheme, you never pay out more than 100% of what you took in from any single investment. Now, yeah, in an MLM program or even the airplane game, I mean, one particular investor can earn more than they paid in, of course. A participant in an MLM company can do a $100 product order and make tens of thousands of dollars. But that's from little pieces of a whole bunch of other orders. The company itself, the operator of the scheme or maybe the MLM company, for every dollar that comes in, if that plan pays 10% down 5 levels, it's mathematically impossible for them to pay out more than 50%, more than 50 cents of that dollar. They use the other 50 cents to run their company and have profit. So if an MLM company were to pay out 10% down 11 levels, that's 110% payout, they could very well be a Ponzi scheme. Because now they have to have another investor, another purchaser, to pay off the first guy. So like in a Ponzi scheme, if that dollar comes in, but I owe $1.50 out, I have to get another investor. I don't have the funds there to do it. So that's the distinction. What's the payout? If it's over 100% on any one payment or investment, that could very likely be a Ponzi scheme. If it's not, it could still be a pyramid scheme, but it likely would not be a Ponzi. Here's the question. If all new investments stop today, all income to the operation, whatever it is, were to stop today, would the existing funds that are in the bank right now, would they be sufficient to pay off all previous investors? Now, assuming they didn't do other illegal things with the funds, say an MLM company goes out of business, or they're paying out 50 cents, 50%, let's say a payout, so 50 cents of every dollar. If all income were to stop, they took in, say, $100,000 that month, well, they should have $50,000 then to pay out and to cover the cost of their products and other things. So maybe they weren't profitable, but the point is they don't need to get other investors to pay off those previous ones. The funds should have came in to cover that. In a Ponzi scheme, if they took in $100,000 that month and then all income stopped, there would be investors looking for way more than $100,000 to be paid to them. And money wouldn't be there. It just wouldn't be there. So that's the distinction. Pyramid scheme, not 100% payout, something less than that on any specific investment or payment. Ponzi scheme, it's usually over 100%. That's the main distinction. So that's the criteria you should look for in various different schemes that you have out there. Now again, the next section is going to be on securities, what defines a security or an unregistered security. You'd be surprised how often this applies to network marketing, and especially in places you would never expect it. Like downline building schemes, for example, where you pay someone to build your downline for you. Why I believe it did apply to Zeek, but I don't think it was a Ponzi. We'll get to that in Section 4. But then again, Section 4 will be the case study. So again, see you back here, Section 3. We'll talk about unregistered securities. And remember, if you go through your MLM career with blinders on, sooner or later, you're going to get blindsided.